said, John, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute after the show. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Joe. Excited to be here today.
Me too. So before we get into your good work, I want to know this. 6 years ago now, this pandemic was happening. It was changing our lives. How did you get through that COVID era, and how has it changed the way that you approach things today?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I will say that my experience with the pandemic and sort of the lockdowns, although I will say I was in Georgia where, the city of Atlanta kind of tightened things down. And I think, kind of from a community standpoint, a lot of people sort of locked down, right? Even though the mayor, governor might have said we're open for business. But for me, I was very fortunate, like in the final analysis, like I didn't lose anybody close to me, right? So I'm very cautious when I say this, but that period of time was actually something I almost look back fondly on because, it was just like a reset in a sense where like, it was like, okay, this thing that's happening that we can't control, like all around me, right? And, certainly we were nervous, my wife and I scared in the first, kind of months or so. Is this going to like nobody really knew, is this virus going to get worse or better, right? Some viruses get worse as they progress through the population. Some become like the common cold, right? And so, of course, you didn't know. But that, quiet time of reflection with the family and, I don't know. When I look back on that, I was like, man, it was kind of nice. There wasn't as much traffic. People seemed to be more kind and nice to each other.
Yeah.
And, this is where I think it's important to divorce yourself from like online commentary and culture, because that was actually a moment where I really realized I need to get off social media, because there was so much anger and frustration on there. But then I'd go meet somebody, at a store and we're social distancing and everybody's just, kind and nice. So, understanding that, a few loudmouths on social media can almost inform what you think people are really thinking, when the reality is that's not really what people are thinking. It's just a couple loudmouths, right? So, from a business perspective, it was interesting because it really, we went remote at my prior company, and my new company, we made the decision out of the gate just to keep it remote.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the biggest thing that came out of the pandemic from a work standpoint was by going remote, my brain opened up in a sense where I realized, what? I no longer have to hire talent that lives like a 20-mile radius around my office. I can go hire talent in Kansas City, Missouri, if they're the right fit, right? Or Toronto, Canada, for example. So our team is kind of spread out all over. There is another team member in Atlanta where I live, but, a couple in Virginia Beach. We've got one in Florida, a few up in Canada, and so that to me was one of the biggest takeaways. If you set the culture up correctly and you have that ability to work remotely, you're no longer constrained by geography when you're looking for talent to join your company. So I think that was kind of my biggest, in a sense, takeaway from a business standpoint. From a personal standpoint, eliminating social media pretty much all but like 100%. I mean, I do look at TikTok a little bit. We were sort of talking about at the front. A little bit on Instagram. I haven't been on Facebook in years, except to like, if somebody sends me a message and I'm like, okay, I better respond to that. But, just getting off of that doom scrolling thing. I think that was one of the biggest personal takeaways from the pandemic personally.
Yeah. And that's the best way to do it because it was ugly. And I think that's the thing. During that time period, podcasting became big. And as you very well know, this realm tends to be kind of a wonderful realm of getting ideas shared in a very civil way. And it is really, I think, the antidote to all the black and white we get in the news. We get told that everybody's divided, everybody's on this side or the other. But when you get in this world, you find there's a lot of gray areas. There's a lot of commonalities. We're all kind of going towards a lot of the same things, I think.
Yeah. I mean, really, if you look at all of human history, sort of this idea of the power structures and systems. And I say systems because people live within those systems. So you could say, oh, this person's doing this, or maybe you don't like Trump or whatever. But it's really like almost like a structural thing, right? Where, we go back to tribalism when, it was sort of critically important that we didn't trust the others, right? Like our tribe is our tribe and anybody outside of that is a threat. And we're now at a place where that's no longer the case, but inherently that's still in our genes and our DNA, right? And so I think this power structure plays to that, right? And they look for ways to divide us versus finding all the commonalities. I mean, human beings are more alike than they're different. And I don't care if you're in Thailand or United States or, Bangladesh. Like, I firmly believe that. Now there's cultural differences and things like that, but from a human perspective, we all kind of want the same thing. And I think podcasts, to your point, are a great place where I've seen or heard a lot of really in-depth, productive conversations between two people on opposite ends of the political
Yeah.
spectrum, as an example, right? And
Totally.
so, podcasting. I didn't think about that when you asked the question, but you're right. I mean, that really is when the podcasting
Yeah.
phenomenon really. I think it was already there, but it leveled up in a big, big way during the
Absolutely.
pandemic. Yeah.
It certainly did. So let's get into your life with your investment playbook, with real estate, with all these things that you do. To
Yes.
boil it down, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of kids at career day. Let's say
Okay.
they're 12 years old. One of the kids wants to know what you do for a living.
Yeah.
What's your answer?
So we buy apartment buildings and we fix them up, make them nicer for our residents. That's the bottom line. Now, the goal of that is to, make money for ourselves and our investors. But, our focus is on improving the residents' lives first and foremost. My business partner and I saw a big gap there. In fact, just touring a deal that we're potentially looking to acquire, you'd be surprised how often the property manager isn't even there, and we have a scheduled tour, and when we're just shopping comps, how often the management office is closed. And so looking for that opportunity, but explaining it to a third grader or whatever, it's we buy apartment buildings and we fix them up and make them nicer for the residents. I mean, that's simply put what we do. And it's a lot of fun. I came from residential real estate, spent 15 plus years, well, actually closer to 20 plus years in that world. And my prior company had sold, and a guy who's now my business partner and I were friends, and he pitched this idea, and it's been a blast, not without its challenges, but a lot of
Yeah.
fun. So yeah.
So take me back to when you were in that position at career day. What did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream job?
A film director, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, a film director. And there's still a part of me that's still out there in my brain. Now I'm writing a screenplay right now. I've written a few ideas and done some things in the past, but I kind of cracked an idea. It's based somewhat on a true story. And so my 2026 goal is to get that done. Likely won't do anything with it, but it's like, for me, I like the idea of just checking, like, I ran a marathon. I just wanted to see if I can do it. And I never ran another one, And so
Yep.
it's like, I had that in my brain. I'm a big film guy. I love well-crafted stories. I'm a big reader. I just love reading about, or watching a great story about human nature and human behavior. And I'm somebody who's not naturally super emotional or empathetic. So books and movies actually help me develop some of that skill by learning
Yeah.
about people who have different backgrounds. And I like action movies, but I tend to like more character studies and things like that. But yeah, filmmaking was the actual goal. In fact, I went to Florida State because they had an exceptional film program,
Yeah.
but somehow stumbled into real estate. And when I first got licensed, Joe, I said to myself, well, I'll just do this until I figure out what I really want to do. And 25 years later, I'm still here.
There you
So,
are. You know,
yeah.
what's interesting? The one thing that I learned doing podcasting is I've talked to people that have been authors or in the movie business.
Yeah.
And there are so many people in Hollywood that buy screenplays and they'll give the person money and they never use them.
That's
There's
right.
this culture,
Yeah.
which is so weird to me, to
Yeah.
think that an idea literally is harvested with money, but it will go to a gravesite just
Yeah.
because. It's
Yeah.
so weird,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, the Hollywood, they even have a thing. It's called the blacklist, or I think it's the blacklist, where it's like, it's some organization. It's like the top 20 screenplays that never were made that year,
Wow.
and so, yeah, it's, I have some friends that are, in that industry. And so, maybe I pass it to them or whatever, but it's really more of just a thing I'd like to accomplish. It'd be
Yeah.
cool to say to my kids, yeah, I wrote a screenplay when I was, in my 40s or whatever, just, I don't know. And I think what I've learned in this transition where I ended up in real estate wasn't really the plan, is that, and I heard Scott Galloway say this, and he's somebody I don't agree with 100% of what he says, but I like a lot of what he says. And he says, you should really follow your talent, not necessarily your passion,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes those things don't align. Like, I'm big into music, but I know enough to know, like, do I really want to go down that path? I mean, certainly not at this age, but even in my 20s, it was like, man, life on the road stinks. Like, I have friends that did that. One of my good friends from high school had a very successful career early on and was kind of on tour. And it was, he was going on his second solo tour. He's a singer songwriter, and he literally just had a panic attack because he's like, I'm going to be away from my wife. I'm going to be sleeping in my car most nights. He's like, why am I doing this to myself? And he still
Yeah.
makes music today,
Yeah.
but he found his talent, which is audio and video production. And that's what he's doing. And he's got a great career doing it. So for me, my talent, I think I've learned is in operational, like problem solving, like system creation, the way my brain works. I can kind of find the, at least I think I can, right? I'd leave it to others to say, but the shortest path to the solution, right? The fewer steps to get to the result. And, that's why I've had this successful career. And I think I could translate it to really any sort of industry in a sense. I mean, maybe not like biomedical or something like that, that
Right.
requires the scientific brain, but any sort of product that's being sold, I think I could do well in that. It just happens to be real estate, so I found what I enjoy doing. Like, when I wait, like, we took off between Christmas and New Year's at our company. We didn't have an active deal. We thought the team did a great job this year. We wanted to give them some surprise time off. But I was like anxious to get back to work
Sure.
yesterday. I was bored. I was like, dude, I got to get into action. I got to do something.
I get it. I know the feeling. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. Where were you born and raised? Where did this all begin for you?
Atlanta, Georgia, actually. So my
Okay.
parents were originally from Pennsylvania, but after Vietnam, my dad had gotten back, and it's kind of this coal mining town up in Pennsylvania. And him and my mom were high school sweethearts. They got married and moved to Florida, and eventually ended up in Atlanta, where I was born and raised.
So, what were the foundational elements that gave you this idea of organizational flow and entrepreneurship and investment and what you're
Yeah.
doing right now? What were the building blocks early on that you think happened? And also with wanting to be in filmmaking and writing
Yeah.
screenplays, how did all of these things kind of become your world and evolve into who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, so from the film side of things, it came out of my dad and I. Like, that's how we sort of initially bonded when we were younger. When I was younger, he was like a big sports guy, like watched college and college and professional football, and it to me it was boring. But films were an area where we both really enjoyed. And as I got older into my like high school years, like the art house cinema and the started with probably the Quentin Tarantino stuff like
Yep.
Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, but then I discovered, Paul Thomas Anderson and all these other kind of interesting filmmakers. And so that's what we would do. We'd go see movies together. Music came from my father as well. Growing up, Bob Dylan, Talking Heads, Bruce Springsteen. We always had music going on road trips or at the house. And big into music as well. Play drums and guitar, record some of my own music. You can find it on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever under my name. But yeah, it's for me, the operational thing was sort of interesting because I just started off selling real estate, and I was with a company for about 4.5 years, and then the Great Recession hit, and our leads were down. My income was cut in half. And what became my next business partner had a couple billboards around town. And I'm like, well, gosh, if everybody else is scared and running for the hills and he's got billboards up, he must be doing something well. And so we ended up connecting. And I think he saw something in me, actually. So he sort of said, hey, John, we have this buyer team over here. They're doing like a couple transactions, a month. I think we can really scale that up. If I give that to you, I'll cut you in a percentage of the revenue, but you still got to sell real estate, by the way. So I took on that challenge and we figured it out. And what I learned in that is that it's partly work ethic, but I have a chip on my shoulder. I never graduated college. I kind of got to college after coasting through high school with A's and B's with like minimal effort. And when I was kind of punched in the face with the reality of like real study skills, I was also having a little too much fun hanging out at, my fraternity or whatever. And so coming out of that and getting into real estate, even though, and I was married at a young age, my wife would be like, nobody says that. But in my mind, people thought I was a failure. And so I'm like, I'm going to show the world that I'm not a failure. And my dad had pulled himself from poverty and retired as the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. So that was kind of, I was in his shadow in a sense. And I'm like, I want to make my parents proud and show them that, yes, why I feel like they wasted money on my college education because they were in a position to pay for it. I'm going to make sure that they don't see it as a waste. And I'm going to show them, and build this thing. And so that was kind of the motivation behind it. But my business partner at the time, I just worked for him, but eventually he made me a partner in the business. And, from that buyer agency to overseeing the listing team to all the operations to eventually being the CEO of the company we built and sold in 2021. I think it was aligning myself with cool people that saw things in me that maybe I didn't even see initially. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Business partners. It's like, it's a marriage. I mean, in a sense. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so just finding that right business partner really was critical to my success for sure.
I'm so glad that you said Pulp Fiction. I remember in my 20s when I went to LA for the first time, I went down Hollywood Boulevard and they sell scripts all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
And I got that script for Pulp Fiction with
Mhm.
Avery and Tarantino,
That's
and it
right.
was the most fascinating thing because there was so much ad-libbing going on. I mean, there was standard things, but reading through it, and scripts are just totally different from books. They have a
That's
different
right.
flow, a different way. It's fascinating to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Um,
100%. And it is interesting to see how different the finished product can
yeah.
look, right? You know,
Uh-huh.
and so the directing thing was interesting because if you think about a director, they're really a manager. Like
Yeah.
they're just managing the cinematographers, the editors. And I mean, obviously the creative component comes in, but they're problem solvers at the end of the day. And I think that's probably likely why I was attracted to it, you know, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it's not too different from what I do today. You
Yeah.
know, every day some team members bringing me an emergency or a challenge or an opportunity, and we have to make a quick decision on what we're
Yep.
going to do about it, right? And so you know, the skill set is probably not likely not all that different from what I'm doing today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, who's been your hero? Who's been your guiding force, inspirational figure in your life that's allowed you to become who you are?
You know, it's my dad.
Yeah.
Truly, you know, he grew up with basically in abject poverty. His dad was a complete and total alcoholic. His mom died when he was 9. He was raised by aunts and uncles and kind of shipped around the country every year or two. And you know, Vietnam, a lot of trauma from that. But you never would have known it. And you know, he just always was positive. And I will say, later in life, he developed his own issues with drinking. And you know, there's it's not like all rosy and sunshine, but just seeing what he was willing to do to provide for us. And a second part is even with his success, he was always very conservative financially. And so that's something that, you know, I don't want to shake, but I can. It's just baked in me, you know. So saving a lot, being prepared for the future, not always going out and buying the big shiny object. I mean, when he retired, he bought himself a Rolex watch. I mean, and he loved watches. He probably could have had 30 of them, but it was just like the one watch. And that, you know, I don't wear it every day, but I do wear it. He did pass away a few years ago. But for sure, him, just that journey from poverty to once again Fortune 500 CEO, and at his celebration of life, so many of his direct reports and people that worked with him. I mean, I didn't eat for an hour and a half after I gave my eulogy because people were just coming up to me to tell me about the difference he made in their life and the impact he had. Even examples, for example, where they were bought by a private equity company, his business was, and he had to go in and fire people that he had hired 15 years ago that he had developed close relationships with. And this one gentleman in particular was like, your dad spent 9 months because he had just like company had just transferred him to Colorado, and then he got laid off 3 months later. And it's like, your dad was the one who found me my next opportunity. He's like, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to find you something. I'm not going to leave you out there. And so just hearing those stories and like, a couple hundred people showed up. It's like, that's what I want to have that impact on people later in life. So yeah, just my dad, man.
So since he got you into music, you mentioned Dylan and the Talking
Yeah.
Heads. What was the first concert that you saw that blew you away?
Um, so from I mean, it's funny, going back to like middle school and high school, I used to go see a lot of punk shows,
Yeah.
so Pennywise and No Effects and Bad Religion. But the first show that really really blew me away, actually, and I'll tell you this, I'm going to preface this: Bob Dylan is not a great live show today. He
No.
hasn't been for 20 plus years.
No.
But my dad and I saw him play at this small theater in Atlanta called the Roxy. I mean, Jimmy Carter was there. We had to wait in line like 6 hours to get these
Wow.
tickets, and he was still on point. This was in the late 90s. And that one really kind of blew my mind. Um, you know, um, Interestingly enough, I would say my favorite concert I've ever been to was actually David Byrne, from Talking Heads, his
Yeah.
American Utopia Broadway show. And I think it was the emotion because my father had passed, and that was a band he had introduced me to at a young age. It's still one of my favorite bands. And just seeing that, I mean, the hair was standing up on the back of my neck. I
Yeah.
cried a little bit. I mean, it really was emotional in a way I didn't anticipate, but it was just so tight, so interesting.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I love everything from jazz to, soul music to, Thai psychedelic rock. I mean, I'm all over the place,
Yeah.
but Bob Dylan and Talking Heads are still just locked in my brain. Like I just love that stuff, and it's all from him. Just growing up, and that's what we would listen to riding around. Interestingly enough, he loved Bruce Springsteen, and I like Bruce Springsteen, and I'm into Bruce Springsteen, but he's never been like at the top of the list for me for some reason. I don't know why. But I still appreciate it. But it's Dylan that really stuck with me for some reason.
I saw him in the late 90s too. We had a thing called Spirit Fest,
Yeah.
and it was really rainy and muddy, I remember. But I remember he was just not on. I mean, it was almost like
Yeah.
he was leaning against the mic. But to
Yeah.
see a legend like that, I mean,
Yeah.
of in the pantheon of music, he's up there at the top.
Yeah.
Um, so let me ask you this: what is it that gets you up every day to do this work? Obviously, it's hard work that you're doing. You got a lot of strings you got to pull. You got to take care of a lot of emergencies. Take care of yourself and your family. What is that energy when the alarm clock goes off to do this at a high level and do it well?
Yeah, I think it's kind of what I touched on earlier, that impact, right? So we stay very close to our investors and our residents. The first focus is on the residents because it's not unlike Costco in my mind, where Costco's, and I think Southwest Airlines had a similar philosophy. It's like hire really great people and take really exceptional care of them. They'll in turn look after the customer, who will in turn look after the shareholder. So much of our corporate culture today starts with the shareholder first, right? And they kind of forget about the customer. And I don't know if you've observed this, but like everything seems to be getting crappier. Like product, like literally just like if I buy like some like a protein powder or something, it's like the stuff just doesn't open up as easy, and like the little scoop they give you is smaller, and it's just like
Yeah.
everything's kind of sucks. And it's like that shareholder value mentality, right? It's like, how do we save a penny versus how do we make our product so exceptional people want to keep coming back again and again? So for me, reviews are one of the big things that get me motivated and fired up. That vision for what I want my future to look like. I'm 44 and I kind of have a firm vision of what I want like my 50s and 60s and beyond to look like. And so working towards that on a daily basis, like by just doing a great job at the company. But I'm a big, like, I just enjoy what I do, man. It's just fun to get up and solve problems. But yeah, I think it's having that clear. And it's interesting because it's not so set in stone that if it's a little bit different, I'm going to be upset about it. But it's just like, I know what I want that to look like. And I've got a very supportive spouse. I've got 3 wonderful children. And that motivation to make sure that they don't have to go into debt to go to college, that motivation to make sure that I could potentially help with a home down payment if necessary, given homes are largely out of reach for the average. I mean, look, if you look at the United States in the past 3 to 5 years, the average first time home buyer went from 27 to 38
Yeah.
just in the past few years, right? So those kind of things are my, I guess, internal motivation to wake up in the morning. But when I get a really great review from a resident or from one of our investors, like that's the juice, I guess, that keeps the kind of wheels turning, so to speak.
What's your idea of retirement? Are you going to retire? What do you think when that word comes up?
Yeah, not in the sense of like playing golf and sitting on the couch all day. In fact, that was what did my dad in. When
Yeah.
he retired, he didn't have a clear vision, I think, on what that needed to look like, and he was exhausted. And I think he just played golf and sat on the couch and drank, and it
Yeah.
caught up with him, unfortunately. So writing is something I've thought a little bit about. Once again, just for my own personal enjoyment. If something comes from it, that's great. I think that's probably the best way to do art in general, right? My plan would be to have a home somewhere, in a rural area that has a lot of land with preferably some old growth forest that I can hike in or spend time in, close, hopefully with some mountains nearby that I can go hiking in. So if you asked me today what my retirement would look like, it would get up, it would write for a little bit, go work out, make a great breakfast, go for a hike, come back, work on some music, write a little bit. And my goal will be to become, I guess, in a sense, just an investor, right? So continuing to look for opportunities to invest in, whether that's a startup. I'm invested in 2 startups today. I invest in real estate deals outside of what I do at Faris Capital. I invest in every deal we do at Faris Capital too. But looking for deals, I have a vision too of potentially maybe getting on some boards, maybe potentially in the future. I'm kind of in conversation with one of the startups now about that. So if that comes to fruition, maybe that helps build that resume up a little bit. But yeah, I definitely don't plan to just sit on the couch and watch TV all day.
I dig it.
I would go insane very quickly.
Oh yeah.
My wife would probably divorce me very quickly before I went insane. But
Yeah, I get it. So of
yeah.
everything that you've done and evolved to at this point, what are you the proudest of?
So I think, at this moment, it's what we built at my prior company, Mark Spain Real Estate. We started when I started there as an employee, just as a sales agent, there was 9 people. When we sold the business, there were 650. We were in markets across the US. But most importantly, when I left, and I got a lot of great feedback while I was there, but when I left, the amount of people that reached out to me, and it's been a few years now, and I occasionally still get a LinkedIn message every month or so from some random person who worked there just saying, hey, just saw your post. I just wanted to tell you that you made a huge impact on my career and my thinking. One person in particular I think about, she was a teacher. She transitioned into real estate. And I saw something in her, and we ended up kind of getting to know each other over a few months. And then we said, hey, look, we want you to build out our training and coaching program at our company. And she was very like, concerned that, can I do a good job? And I said, Brandy, just don't worry about perfect. Just let's start with good. Let's start building it. I have no doubt you can do it. And over 3 years, right, she built out this robust training program. I ended up leaving. But, some of the messages I've gotten from her, I mean, it's just that kind of stuff that just really fires me up. I think that's the goal in life, just leaving a positive impact on the people you touch. I mean, it doesn't have to be 650 people. It might be 2 or 3. But that stuff right there is definitely what I'm most proud of. And my business partner, when we started kind of thinking more about like my management position in the company, and he started talking to me more about his goals, like he's like, my goal is to build something to sell, and I have a number. And we exceeded that number by 25% when we sold. So that was really cool. And I think for me, that ability to sort of okay, we have this goal, and we didn't reach that goal for 15 years, by the way. But once again, we exceeded it. But it was that thing of like that patience and methodical approach, and not wanting something tomorrow, having the foresight to say, if we do all these things, it might take 10 years, 15 years, we're going to hit that number, we're going to get there, and actually accomplishing that while also having such a positive impact on people. It's something I think about almost every day, just how proud I am of what we accomplished over there. And I mean, proud of the team, proud of the people, not just me. Right. But that was a big one for sure.
So if anybody wants to reach out, they want to dig into more of what you're doing, get involved, any of the good business, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, I mean, so fariscapitalpartners.com is our website. That's Faris capitalpartners.com. You can book a time to talk with me there. My name is very unique, John Makarewicz, so you can easily find me on LinkedIn, connect with me there, send me a message. Love to tell you what we're up to at Faris Capital Partners, or just talk business, talk life.
Right on. I will put all of those links in the show notes. What a delight. Thank you, John. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your passion. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
So much, Joe. Thank you so much. It was fun.
Yes, absolutely.